Good morning, everyone. My name is Norm Horofker. I'm going to turn my microphone on. I think I'm on, yes. My name is Norm Horofker, and I'm the minister of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax. And I'm speaking to you from our sanctuary here in Halifax.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Moeller, and I bring greetings from the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. I am coming to you live from our sanctuary at 120 Park Street, and the members from our congregation are joining by Zoom this morning.
Today we're celebrating a maple syrup communion, and if you didn't get the memo, I would like you, and you would like to partake fully in this event, I suggest you get a small beverage ready. We're using dilute maple syrup here and in Bangor, but any beverage will do, and a small piece of bread or pastry. And we're using an official Timbit at this location.
Before we get started, I want to just welcome anyone who is joining us for the first time and let them know that we are glad that you are joining us on Sunday morning and encourage you to stay for the coffee hour, the virtual coffee hour that will happen after the service, a way to get to meet people from both sides of the border. So, welcome.
Thank you, Andrew. With me here today in Halifax are Jessica Friesen, our music director, and Marie-Claude Leroux, our director of religious exploration.
Today we will be presenting a very special service connecting our two sibling congregations, which were both founded in the early 1800s. In fact, on Thursday, our congregation will be celebrating its 203rd birthday. For a number of years, the Bangor congregation has celebrated the maple syrup communion, and I understand that you have done that as well. And I just wanted to thank Halifax for their gift of Canadian maple syrup. We exchanged maple syrups, and we're going to find out which maple syrup is the best in the service. Today, along with me, we have members of the UU Society of Bangor staff, Karen Childs, who is our Director of Spiritual Exploration, and Molly Webster, who is our Music Director, who is bringing the introit and special music along with members of our choir. We thought each congregation might be interested to see a little bit about what's going on in the life of each congregation. So we've made a little time before we start our service to offer announcements, and we have some slides that will help us be able to share a little swiftly some of the things that are going on in each of our congregations. So here's a slide showing some of the activities that are going on this week at our congregation in Bangor. For those of you in Bangor, this is, you can check your e-news, weekly newsletter, for details on all of these events and a few other things that are happening in our community. You can always visit our website or our Facebook group to get updates as well. And then just a reminder that we are not going to have an offertory today, but you can make contributions to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor online. You can pay your pledge, contribute to our Share the Plate, or just simply make a donation. And this month, half of our Share the Plate will go to our UUSB food programs, which include a free bean supper, soup kitchen that we participate with the Salvation Army, as well as our bag lunch program. So thank you. And Norm, what's going on in Halifax?
So this week in Halifax, we have our 7:30 on Tuesday evening, our Dismantling Racism Task Team. On Thursday, we have a social call every Thursday evening that people are invited to participate in. And we have our membership team meeting on Thursday evening as well. On Saturday, we're having our end of the month Soulful Sundown service on Zoom, which is going to be a lot of fun. Jessica leads us in music. We'll have probably some readings and some poetry as well. And then on Sunday, March 28th, is the kickoff for an anti-racism series that'll involve 2 sermons and 4 workshops spread over period of almost 2 months. But this Sunday is the kickoff for that, and Professor Wilbur Hayden will be here as our speaker this Sunday. So don't miss that.
Great. Thank you, Norm. As you can see, there's a lot going on in our congregations, and that's wonderful to see that there is aliveness and thrivingness happening across the border as well. So now let us prepare to move into our time of worship together. I invite you to take a deep breath. Come into the space that you are joining us from, whether it be your home or office or your bed or living room. Relax, take a couple deep breaths, look out the window and see the skies opening up and the sense of spring starting to unfold, to open your hearts as we open our service with this morning's introit.
At this point in our service each week in Halifax, we pause to acknowledge the land and the interdependent web of nature that sustains us. This morning we have a very special guest who I'm proud to call a personal friend and a friend of the Halifax congregation. Mary Louise Bernard is a Mi'kmaq elder from Cape Breton. Mary Louise will be reading a story for us later in the service, and she will be properly introduced then. But right now, I think Mary Louise has some words for us about our land and the place in it.
Greetings. It's a pleasure to be here this morning and to acknowledge the land that we live on. It's greetings from Mi'kmaq, the unceded territory of my ancestors and myself, the Mi'kmaq people. And to respect the land that is around us. It's so beautiful. And to us, everything has spirit, everything has life, because we're all equal. As the trees beside me, the rocks, the snow. It's beautiful when you think about how connected we are. And it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I welcome you all to this beautiful land and thank Mother Earth for what she has given us.
Our chalice lighting words this morning are by Mary Frances Comer. And we would like to do them as a transnational call and response this morning. I invite everyone watching from across everywhere in Canada to read the Halifax section with me. And then Andrew will read those for the United States, reading in response. There are 2 slides. Each slide has one part for Haligonians, if you will, and one part for Bangorians, if you will. Following the reading, Andrew and I will light the chalices in our respective congregations. So are you ready, Halifax? Please read with me. We are grateful to mark time with seasons, to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries, or to gather as family to remember our loved ones.
And dear ones in Bangor, please read with me. In all these seasons, may we give thanks for the breath of life, ever mindful of the fragile nature of existence. May we live fully in each moment.
From summer to fall and winter to spring, we gather in mystery and in the bonds of beloved community.
May we radiate love both within and beyond these walls, and across the internet I will add, this day and in all the days to come, caring for those whom we love and for those who we have yet to meet. Blessed be. Amen.
And now I believe Andrew and I are going to light the chalices in our respective sanctuaries. Jessica, please lead us in our opening hymn.
Good morning. Our opening hymn today is called Praise in Springtime. It's number 1005 in Singing the Journey. The words will be on the screen, so please join along if you know it. We're going to do 3 verses, so it'll be pretty easy to catch on. Praise to God and thanks we bring, hearts rejoice and voices sing. Praises to the glorious one, for the year of wonder done. Praise now for the budding green, April's resurrection sing. Praise now for the shining hour, starring all the land with flowers. Praise now for the summer rain, feeding day and night with grain. Praise now for the tiny seed, holding all the world shall need. Praise now for the golden root, meadow grass and orchard fruit, and for hill and valley broad, bring we now our thanks to God. Praise now for the snowy rest, falling soft on nature's breast, for the happy dreams of birth, brooding in the quiet earth, for this year of wonder done. Praise to all the glorious one, hearts rejoice and voices sing. Praise and love and thanks we bring.
And now we have something very special for our time for children of all ages. And I invite Marie-Claude to do the introduction.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I consider it a gift that here in the East Coast, with spring comes the running of the sap. That turns into my very favorite food, which is maple syrup. As has been our tradition these past few years, during our spring maple service, we will hear the story of the Sweetwater Maiden, the Mi'kmaq legend of maple syrup. This year, we have the great pleasure of having this story told to us by the author herself, Mary Louise Bernard, elder and former chief of the Wagimac Cook First Nation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. And it is a true pleasure to read one of my bedtime stories. This is a story that was told to me by my mother long ago. And it's the Sismo-Wanabawisquage, Sweetwater Maiden, the legend of maple syrup. It was a harsh winter, the snow deep and the wind bitter cold. Slowly the warmth of the land melts the frozen land. Deep in the forest stands an old Indian man with arms outstretched to the sun. For today he would go on a spiritual quest, It would not be the same as springs before. He would travel on his quest alone. His life partner and mother of his children did not survive the bitter winter. With sadness in his heart, he knows this journey will be his last. Awakening from her sleep, comfortable under a deerskin blanket, a young Indian maiden hears footsteps. She peeks through the bearskin hide, which is the doorway to her home. She sees her grandfather trudging slowly up the mountain. She feels his pain and knows he must travel alone to speak to his spirit. She remembers springs before, where she would watch her grandparents enter the forest together. The days grow warmer, and grandfather has been gone for many days. She whispers to her mother with a concerned look on her face. Her mother reaches for her hand and places a flint in her open palm. The Indian maiden gathers her belongings and hurries into the forest. Glancing back, she waves farewell to her mother. Her mother smiles and nods her head in approval. Soon the Indian maiden disappears into the forest. All that remain are the footprints in the fresh fallen snow. Grandfather, weak from days on his quest, rests on a rock, listening to the running water of a small stream. He senses someone coming at a distance. He builds his shelter and strikes a tree with his tomahawk, leaving a gap on a tree. And then he slowly retires into his shelter of branches and boughs, dreaming of a time as a young warrior, vibrant and strong. The Indian maiden sees the tomahawk from a distance. She slowly approaches it, and beneath it are her grandfather's belongings. Water from the handle of the tomahawk drips into the hollowed out log. She quietly starts a fire and prepares her grandfather's meal. As the sweet aroma drifts into the shelter, her grandfather awakens. There by the fire sits his granddaughter. She hands him the bowl of food and gives him a questioning look, for the food she had prepared has a taste foreign to her. Grandfather finishes his meal. He glances up at the tree as the sweet water drips from his tomahawk. He smiles and secretly tells his granddaughter of his vision and bestows on her a sacred name. For without her, his vision would have only been a dream. The Creator has given us a gift to be shared by all. As seasons turned into years, the Indian maiden often told her story to her people while making sweet food using the sap from the maple tree. The Indian maiden became known as Sweetwater Maiden, the name her grandfather gave her. Na wujadi gemket wala elnuskes del nenut sismona bawisques dan deliwisun koptumna winishkamija. That is my language in Mi'kmaq. Walalio. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mary Louise. We're so blessed to have you here with us today to read that. It was so nice to hear your childhood bedtime story.
Well, thank you so much.
I wanted to let folks know that if they're interested in buying Mary Louise's book, they can contact Reverend Norm or Reverend Drew. And it's $20 Canadian and $17 American. And they can help you find out how to purchase that. Thank you again, Mary Louise.
Okay, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Now is the time in the service when we would normally open ourselves up to doing a time for joys and sorrows, but because we're streaming live on YouTube, we want to be able to protect people's privacy and not share their joys and sorrows out in the World Wide Web. So today I'm going to offer a pastoral prayer, and then we will give a moment of time after the service has ended and we say goodbye to our YouTube folks so that we can share those joys and sorrows within our community. Also, just want to give thanks to that wonderful, wonderful story from Louise. That was a great, and I'm seeing all kinds of wonderful comments. You've touched our hearts. Thank you. Which sets the mood for a prayer. So, dear friends, join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal spirit, interconnected web of which we are a part, we gather today as people of many nations to hold up the struggles and the joys that are part of our lives. Today, as we celebrate the coming of spring and the thawing of the earth, so too may our hearts thaw and open to the coming of light, the coming of warmth in our beings. Even as we do so, we know that we experience many struggles. And for those who are struggling this day as they reach the end of their lives, as they struggle with ailments, as they live in fear of the pandemic that is around us and within some of us, we pray that they find hope and comfort and support. We also hold up the many anniversaries. We hold up birthdays and new beginnings, new opportunities that are unfolding to us in the springtime and in the changing of the season. We gather in this way, and we will share later on the details of our lives and our experiences and how they inform us, because we know that each life tells a meaningful story, and each life holds a deep and abiding truth. By coming together and remembering that we are connected to each other, not only do we grow closer to becoming whole, but we grow closer to becoming one. Blessed be. Amen. I now invite you to join in singing our reflective hymn, 123, presented by Jessica.
The words will be on the slides for you. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Thank you, Jessica, and all those wonderful voices that I heard in the background. Dear friends, the rhythm of the seasons remind us of the cycle of life flowing in the natural world. Yesterday, we marked the official coming of spring as we passed the quarter point of our Earth's rotation around the sun. In doing so, we are reminded of the ancient cycle of our solar system's process here on Earth, the process of birth, growth, decline, and death, which in turn brings forth new life. We also rejoice in the returning of the longer days and the shorter nights, which renews our spirits and our hope for new beginnings and of harvests yet to come. This spring, we are grateful for being able to bring in the spring with our two congregations joined across borders into a larger community of faith. In doing so, we celebrate new beginnings and new opportunities in our lives. As people of faith who have both celebrated this ritual of maple syrup communion separately in our own congregations, but today, despite all the travel restrictions, the closed borders between us, we come together to celebrate the ritual of maple syrup communion together as a larger community. Diverse in many ways, yet united by a common faith that transcends time, borders, ethnicity, race, class, and sexual identity. Together, we are united in our common faith and the spirit of connection that ties us and all beings together and hopes for a world of equality, justice, kindness, and compassion for all people and all beings. Just as a sap and the trees start pumping this time of year to remind their deciduous ancestors like the maple that there is more living to do, we too are reminded that despite the challenges of the global pandemic and of human divisions that we have created everywhere, there is still a lot of life, living, and removing of barriers that we have to do. In a few moments, we'll begin our maple syrup communion ritual. If you have not already, now is a good time to get your maple syrup and your bread or Timbit or whatever maple syrup delivery system you have available to you ready, so that you are ready when the time comes to deliver that sweetness to your lips. Our ritual is very simple. First, we'll hear a few words of a maple syrup communion litany that has been part of the tradition of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor's maple syrup communion. And then Reverend Norm will offer a blessing on the maple syrup and the trees and the world of which we are a part. Then, as our special music is offered by the UUSB choir, we will invite you on your own in your own time to enjoy your maple syrup snack by dipping your Timbit or donut or whatever you're using to deliver your maple syrup into the syrup and imbibing. As you enjoy the sweet music and the sweet taste in your mouth, I encourage you to reflect on all the things that bring sweetness to your life, even if it is just in this particular moment. For those of you who are participating at the Halifax Sanctuary, when the music begins, Reverend Norm will invite you up to your little communion table, and you can grab your Timbit and syrup and take it back to your seat and enjoy it there. So, with that, I'm going to invite Reverend Norm back up to offer our litany of spring. And Norm, how about you start us off?
Thank you, Andrew. We see, taste, and smell the signs of change. In the cold blue of our northeastern skies and in the frozen earth, winter's pageantry fades before the coming of spring.
Spring, the awakening of life, is ready to be observed and cherished in our hearts.
The afternoon sun's lavender shadows, cast by trees and snow, lengthened by the light foretelling of spring.
Like an artist, the power of creation within the earth prepares to spread its colors over the white forest floor.
The interlaced bare branches of trees cast mystical shapes against the night sky. The light of the moon reveals the eternal beauty of the tangled arms reaching for the stars.
Give to us the strength of the rooted trees and the life which flows from earth to limb.
Drink the sweet sap of life, which flows from root to limb, bringing strength and renewal.
Give to us sensibility of the good earth, as well as the courage to reach for the stars.
Bread, like life, must be broken to be whole, to fulfill its purpose, to embrace and nourish the bittersweet of life. Let us break bread.
In the breaking of bread and in the tasting of sap, let us give thanks for the return of the light, the lengthening of days, the lifting of our spirits, and the renewal of life, which is eternal. Blessed be.
I offer now this blessing. We have before us here in our sanctuary, and you may have at home, two simple elements that represent the rebirth of life, with the great turning of the seasons. These simple gifts, the maple sap that flows without any bidding, and the bread, the most basic of the variety of foods that nourishes our bodies. May these things bring you a blessing today, the blessing of humility and hope as we acknowledge our place amid the great interconnected cycles of life, and the blessing of joy as we taste the sweet nectar of maple that has been flowing at this time of year for untold millennia, and the blessing of human community as we remember how this gift was freely shared between the indigenous peoples of this land and the first settlers. And lastly, the blessing of peace and goodwill for the year ahead until we can once again share this symbolic communion meal. May it be so, and amen. So I'm going to invite people to come forward in the sanctuary. We broke out our communion glasses and our communion pitcher and our communion chalice for the first time in who knows when. So I'm going to pour a little bit of maple sap and invite people to come forward and pick up a little bit of maple syrup, sap, and a Timbit. What could be more Canadian? So if anyone would like to come forward. No. Welcome back. I want to thank the Bangor Church for the beautiful music that their choir has provided for us today. It's perfect. Thank you. So, Andrew and I talked briefly about what we might do in the way of a homily or a sermon, and there were so many moving pieces for today's service, and we were so busy getting everything ready. We thought after we got to this point in the service, we might just want to stop and reflect on what we're doing, why we're doing, and what it means to us today. Having Mary Louise Bernard with us today has added a special feature. So I was thinking about the fact that today we're separated by a border. There's a line on the map between our two congregations, an artificial line, but a line that's pretty well enforced, especially during COVID times. But we're united. We're united by the geography of the Northeast, by the forests, by the feeling of winter and the turn to spring. We're united by maple trees, and especially today, we're united by our common faith tradition. And it's a faith tradition that was planted here in the beautiful Northeast by our Unitarian and our Universalist forebears in the early 19th century. And just to think for a moment about that connection over time between the two congregations warms my heart. Andrew, what were you thinking?
I was also thinking, being a sailor, that we are connected by waters, the waters of the oceans that flow, different currents that mingle and mix. And I also thought of our ancestors, how part of their coming to the Turtle Island, North America, they were seeking new opportunities, new beginnings. It was a springtime in some ways from them as they were fleeing religious persecution. And unfortunately, when they got here, they didn't value the freedom as much for all people except for themselves, so that there's a little awkwardness in that, just like there's an awkwardness in spring as we watch new buds and new life bursting forth through snow and tender blossoms that risk the opportunity of being frozen and destroyed by frost prematurely. And I also thought about how we tend to think of ourselves as a faith as kind of our faith is tied up in a particular congregation, a geographic location, but actually our faith is something that's spread out, that's much, much bigger. And actually part of our founding documents, the Cambridge Platform and whatnot, we think of it as giving each congregation autonomy, but it also talks a lot about the importance of being able to support and help one another. So I'm really excited that we are supporting and being together on this special day of Ostara and the vernal equinox.
Thank you, Andrew. I still have on my tongue the taste of maple syrup. And the maple syrup we got from Bangor, I must say, was excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm thinking about the attraction of maple syrup. What is it about maple syrup beyond just the sweet flavor? Because the chemists in the lab can make things that are almost as good, but never as good. Maple syrup, to me, and the flowing of the maple sap, when I know that's happening, that's the undeniable acknowledgement that winter is over and spring has begun. You can't put the sap back in the roots once it starts to flow. The fact that we harvest it one drop at a time from trees that are growing naturally in a forest is impressive to me. I get a little sad when I've been reading articles about the possibility of growing maple trees in plantations with special harvesting techniques. It wouldn't be maple syrup if it came that way. I want to know that someone has gone into the forest and tapped a tree, and that's the maple syrup that I'm getting.
Hmm. And just in responding to what you're saying there's a part of me that feels a sadness of turning maple syrup into a commercial commodity that removes that human interaction with the natural world. So that's a bit of sadness to think that we're going in that direction too. I think one of the things that spring reminds us of, and the sweetness of the sap, although it lingers for a little bit, that often life moves on so fast and we go from one season to another and zoom around and keep moving so much that we forget to pause and taste that sweetness that I just is still lingering on my tongue, probably won't be there an hour from now. And so I think it's important that we take the moment to really savor those things that are sweet in our lives, and make room for them, even if they are fleeting, so that we can have our hope and our spirit renewed, and we can feel our connection to each other and to the earth. Any more thoughts, Norm?
Just in closing, my closing thought would be that I am so appreciative for you and your staff and the people in Bangor who joined us for this service, as well as the members of my own congregation and John Piccolo and others that worked so hard behind the scenes to get all the pieces into place. It's our hope that in this short time together, we've been able to lift people out of a focus on COVID-19. Maybe we've been able to see our place in the bigger picture of life on the planet Earth, of which we are a part. The maple trees don't know a thing about COVID-19. They're gonna produce sap, and they're gonna produce leaves, and they're going to be ready for a new year, regardless. And I hope we all have that vitality in the days ahead.
Yeah, and I also hold that even the virus that has claimed so many lives and has caused so much chaos in our lives is part of the natural world, and we have no idea what its wisdom is for us, except we are learning the importance of needing to work together, that it's not something that we can treat in isolated forms. But I hope that we open ourselves to the mystery of the opportunities that the virus has presented us, such as doing Zoom services together, and also pondering where is COVID's place in the world right now, and as we continue our prayers that whatever happens to it, that it finds another place to abide, besides the human body that has led to such suffering. I also want to thank Reverend Norm. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and your staff and some of the folks from your congregation, and I look forward to future gatherings. And also, I hope that once things get better and we're able to travel, that we'll be able to visit in person sometime. I'd love to see Halifax and those wonderful wave stained glass windows behind you.
Thank you, Andrew. That's mutual, and I'm sure many people watching from Halifax are planning a trip to Bangor before or as soon as we're able to do such things.
Great.
So now Andrew's going to cover for me for a few minutes because we need to get something set up. And over to you again, Andrew.
Okay, well, you probably figured once we had the maple syrup communion that the sweetness had ended, but it's not so, because we are going to have an opportunity to hear from the After Choir Band, which is a long-term tradition, I guess, in Halifax. It goes back a ways. The name of the group comes because the only time the people who were involved in the band could find time to practice was after choir practice, so they're the After Choir. It's not referring to any thing in Revelation or any end of times or anything like that, so don't worry. And the After Choir was first, I guess the name of it was first coined by Reverend Dr. John Burroughs Johnson, who was a former minister in Halifax. So bring some sweetness to our ears.
So this was a song written by Pete Seeger, and it's kind of fun to reflect on the idea that Pete Seeger was so moved by the maple syrup, the sweetness of that, and also the exercise that happens to bring the small amount of sap. Once it gets boiled down and evaporates, you're left with a very small amount, but the struggle to bring a full serving of maple syrup is something that kind of reflects that struggle and challenge. But it's such a marvelous thing to get. It's maple syrup time. It's maple syrup time. First we get the buckets ready, clean the pans and gather firewood. Late in the winter, it's maple syrup time. Sunny days, but still a cold and freezing night. For a few weeks, it's maple syrup time. We boil and boil and boil and boil it all day long, till 97% of water evaporates, just like the song. When what is left is syrupy, don't leave it too long. The burning, it's maple syrup time. It's maple syrup time. I know it's not the quickest system, but each year I can't resist it. Get out the buckets and tap the trees in time. Half the fun and satisfaction when it's done. Keep up the fire, it's maple syrup time. My grandma says perhaps it's just a waste of time, but no more than this attempt to make a happy little rhyme. So pat your feet and swing your tail, but keep in good time. Up the fire, maple syrup time. It's maple syrup time. I'll send this song around the world with
Thank you, After Choir, for that wonderful song. It definitely got the blood pumping in me as I was swaying to the music. So, we're now going to move into our time of extinguishing our chalice, and then we will close with a benediction that is a song that we sing in Bangor every Sunday at the end of the service. So, Norm, if you're ready to extinguish the chalice. And as we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, and connection to each other and the natural world, let us be reminded that although our time of worship has come to an end, our service to each other and the world has just begun. Blessed be. I now invite you to join in singing our benediction, and the words are on the slide in front of you.
So I want to thank again all those who attended the service today in Bangor or in Halifax or anywhere else in the world. I want to thank those here in the sanctuary or those participating by Zoom or by YouTube. I will say goodbye now to those who joined us by YouTube as we end our live streaming.